Sawadee and welcome to another academic corner here for the Fungit Pod. It's Saturday and you know what it means. We're not taking the day off. We are trying to learn something, share ideas, share thoughts, share experiments, share what's happening in our lives. And today I'm doing what I promised the last time. So the first 3-4 episodes, if we count the intro episode, we talked about the base. Like what's the basic foundation for, I don't want to call this a course, for our episodes, right? And so now we have the base, and now we start to jump into like actually sharing ideas, sharing experiments, sharing what we're trying to do, and so on. And so today I want to start by talking about how and then I hope this also reflects with you, and I hope this gives you some ideas how I use multimedia in teaching of higher education, like at university level right now, right? So that's why I call this episode Effective Use of Multimedia in Teaching. Could be any form of media, but more on this in a second, right? So before I start, I want to highlight once again that it's very important that we all do our own experiments. So I'm suggesting things, I'm sharing things, but it doesn't mean that this is the perfect solution that you should just be copying. It's just about inspiration. If you're doing something else, something similar, something completely different, share it, because I think that's really the ultimate goal here. Is just I would like to have a community where we all feel safe to share what we're doing. Maybe we can learn from each other. So that's the ultimate goal. That's why I always talk to myself once a week in the hopes that we can actually start talking, going back and forth and sharing some ideas. So that's just the ultimate goal here. Okay, so today trying to talk about how to harness the power of multimedia in any course actually, right? Because I think almost any course can actually benefit from at least some form of multimedia interaction, right? This could be videos, could be podcasts, could be interactive modules, you name it. And so let's talk about how to do that. Like how can we actually do that, right? So, and if you look into like university, higher education, academia, multimedia is, and I hate it because we're all exposed to multimedia all the time, and multimedia itself is already a very old term in my opinion, right? But in university setting and higher education, it's still kind of like an unexpected twist. It's like, oh wow, that's so exotic, it's so thrilling. You're using multimedia in your course. Oh my god, shouldn't be. It's 2023, shouldn't be the case, right? But the fact that it still is also a weapon for us if you do it, because unfortunately students aren't used to it, right? So it keeps students engaged right away because it's not normal. Unfortunately, it's still not normal that lectures have this multimedia component to it or to them, right? So it keeps them engaged, keeps them on the toes. So that's a good thing already. It's one of the main reasons why you should be thinking about using multimedia in your classes. And it could be very simple, like I said last time, right? Small steps, motivational speaker here, small steps also lead to progress. And so it could be a well-chosen video if that's a thing. If you're like, hey, I can't change my whole syllabus now, pick a cool video. That could be the first start. Important, of course, is that it really needs to be fitting. It shouldn't be just some random YouTube video or something, of course, right? Or like a video from 1965 or something with like terrible quality and so on. Ideally, if you pick a video just to finish the thought, right, of course, it should like relate to the class that you're teaching. It should like illustrate something, should make some points. It should not just entertain, of course, unless you talk about this later on. You could also share podcasts. I do this a lot and more just in a second, that maybe you're a history teacher and you share a history podcast that talks about like some historical figures, for example. So multimedia is kind of like your teaching assistant, like a co-star, so to speak, right? It makes just what you're doing better, more tangible, more fun. And so let's see how multimedia can help make you shine as well, right? Now, when we talk about like what actually is multimedia, like, okay, multimedia in the classroom, awesome, but what actually is multimedia? Well, yes, like I said, it's for me, it's a very old term, but generally speaking, multimedia videos, right? It could be like TED Talks, documentaries, YouTube tutorials, and so on. And I teach one class, for example, on media and social diversity, and we talk about like media concepts. And there's one channel out there called Plastic Pills. They do a great job in like explaining certain media theories with like very, very well animated, for example, like so it resonates with a younger audience. I'm not afraid to give them credit and say, hey, this is from Plastic Pills, go check this out. How they're going to explain like postmodernism to you right now, for example. Yeah, so it shouldn't replace your teaching, of course. It should elevate it, right? Enhance it. That's the trick here. So videos, of course, are like a very old, or like no rocket science in this case, very old form of multimedia, but still very, very valuable, I believe. Podcasts are also awesome. I think they're great for like detailed, in-depth discussions. You hear like interviews with experts, for example. I think that's something very interesting. Also, there's in lots of media studies classes where then media scholars talk about certain media theories, for example. But then, I mean, audio video is nothing new, right? But you could go like a bit more modern with like interactive modules, for example. Like, I mean, there's so many interactive tools, right? There's Adobe Captivate, Captivate. There's Articulate Storyline. You can create like engaging interactive sessions. You could have like digital whiteboards, for example, as well. Jamboard by Google is free, for example. There are so many different tools. You have like online quizzes, for example. You can see like, you can ask questions to the students and they can reply right away. Mentimeter, one of them. There are so many out there. So I can give you a list. Or maybe I should do like an episode of like my favorite, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 tools or something. But there are so many out there. So if you're looking for some interactive modules, you can just go now, Google interactive class modules. There will be so many. And here's important that you don't just pick all of them. You really just pick the ones that really enhance your class. But more on this in just a second. So yeah, making the class more interactive, especially if you're doing hybrid classes, for example, is a great idea. But also in like complete like on-site classes, I found that having those interactive modules in between is also like, because not everybody wants to answer like, hey, who knows the answer? And, quiet crickets. But then if you say like, hey, I'm just checking like vote here, what do you think is the right answer, A or B, for example, and then you just see like who votes for what or how many people vote for what, so you don't have to point out the students, and they don't feel like they're losing face or something. Right? It makes it much easier for some interaction, for example. And you can even make them fun of it in a lighthearted manner, for example, depending on how your relationship with the students is, of course. So that's lots of fun, and I think those interactive modules are really a good idea to spruce up everyday classes. You could also do to go like full now virtual or full multimedia. Like you could use VR or AR or so on. For example, if you have the budget in your faculty, do VR. You could embark on like virtual field trips and like Google Expeditions, for example. And I mean, even if you don't have the mega budget, you could use like Google Cardboard, for example, to then create a VR experience. So creativity, right? I did a scavenger hunt, and they had to use a AR tool. Like when they did a scavenger hunt, we're doing it on campus, and so of course I had to do it before, so I know like which if you use like that AR tool, it would show you like different sites, for example. And if you just move it around, it will show you like, oh, here, this is this site. There's this restaurant like a kilometer away. There's this and that. So I noted down some of those sites, marks, and then they had to go there, find some tips and so on. Lots of work, but it was kind of fun. So creativity, right? Use your creativity. And again, you don't need to use all those tools at the same time in the same class, right? So it really just use the tools that really enhance what you're teaching, obviously. So that leads me to the point, and if you're watching this video and not just listening, you see me looking at the notes because I actually I colored them like on my Mac. I highlighted them, bold and highlighted. how to incorporate multimedia effectively. It's like talk about this. So I highlighted it because it's so very important to me. Yeah, so we're not going into like Christopher Nolan territory now. We're not gonna like create the next big blockbuster as a university lecturer, right? That's very important. So it's not about just playing clips and hoping for the best, and it's not about like putting on some cinematic masterpieces, right? It's in between, like far away from both sides, hopefully, right? So if we create some multimedia experiences, we gotta focus on a few things. So one, we gotta align it with learning objectives. That's the most important thing. Your multimedia choice needs to serve your learning goals. It should not distract from it. And that's one thing I heard from a few colleagues when we discussed this. They said that like the students, for example, struggled with like the tool that they introduced with the sign up. Then it wouldn't run on some of the computers or on the iPads, or they couldn't download an app or whatever. And then like it took lots of time. This then takes away from the learning objective. Okay, so this should not happen. That is very, very important. So always align with your learning objective. So your learning objective should be like in the center of when you're brainstorming, you put it on a paper or whatever, however you do it. Learning objective is the most important thing, and the technology, multimedia, is just enhancing it. Okay, that's incredibly important. Secondly, active engagement is important. And you should always encourage active engagement. That means you gotta post questions and encourage discussions, or create like tasks that are somewhat related to that multimedia content, not just watch the video and then that's it. Right, so if you're using a video, then you have to do some follow-up stuff with the video. Like, I mean, you could ask some questions, so very basic. You could have a quiz about the video, very basic, but you could also then add a few different levels, like use what you saw in the video to create something else. And so you know what I mean, right? So make sure that it's really active engagement and not just passive watching, hoping they remember something, and then it's like, hey, yeah, I have a multimedia class because I use a video. Right, so this active engagement is also incredibly important. Otherwise, it's like when we were in school like 20, 30 years ago, however old we are right now, 1, 2, 3 weeks before the holidays, teacher comes in, here, watch a video. Yeah. You know that this doesn't do anything, right? So make sure to encourage active engagement, okay? Ensure accessibility, third point. Yeah. If you do use videos, offer captions, offer transcripts, alternative content to make sure that all students can access the material. Students could have disabilities that prevent them from accessing it. Students could be exchange students that don't understand your language, for example. It happens here a lot. Like I'm recording here in Bangkok, Thailand, so if then all the course, I mean, obviously I teach in like an English-speaking setting, but I have lots of Thai colleagues, of course, and sometimes they just forget that, hey, I forgot that my PDF or that a video is in Thai. Oh, sorry, because you forget it's your native language, so sometimes you don't think about it. So think about your exchange students, like the foreign students that speak a different language. Yeah, so make it as accessible as possible. Okay, that's important. Because if you have like a cool multimedia portion in your class, you plan it, but then students cannot access it, or only a few students can access it, or only students with an iPhone can access it, and it doesn't run on an Android, for example, it's no help for anyone, right? So please make sure that it's accessible. And then lastly, balance and blend, okay? It's like a good, to stick with the metaphor of like Christopher Nolan and so on, movie making, it's like a film score, right? Multimedia should complement your teaching, not overpower it. Okay, so that is also very important. And like in the Barbie movie, where I think the best thing about the Barbie movie was the soundtrack. I did not say that. So balance and blend. Don't let the technology, the multimedia overpower the actual content of the class, okay? So a few examples I just try to think of, and then I give you some of my own examples. But like, if you're like a history professor, what I said earlier, you could use VR to tour ancient ruins, for example. Why not? Like a chemistry prof could use like some interactive modules to maybe simulate chemical reactions, for example. And literature professor could use like some podcasts, for example, of like renowned authors, because let's be honest, everybody me too, has a podcast. So you could just share like podcasts of those renowned authors, and they discuss their works or other literary work, of course. Yeah, what I also do is what I said earlier. I have lots of interactive elements in my classes usually, whether that be like votes, polls, Q&As. I have some hybrid assignments usually, so that I don't have to spend that much time explaining things during class time. Class time, like, or face-to-face time, is usually where the students have to actually do something, work on stuff. So the explanation phase of the lecture is usually then online, in a very interactive way. So not just like read this PDF or read those 5 chapters in a book or something like this. So then there are different interactive tools that you can use to make sure that you recap a chapter, or you have like a few questions after a chapter, and then they can answer, and you can see how they answer. I have a bot, for example, that also takes them through like different chapters in different classes. So you can be like really creative there if you want to, I think. What's very important, so a few tips and best practices here before I wrap things up. What's really important, you have to test. You really have to test. Like the first time I created a bot, it took me way too long, and so I just finished it the night before. I didn't want to admit it. I finished the night before class. And just like a student, right? Assignment done the night before class. So I finished like the bot the night before I wanted to try it, to use it. I'm like, okay, I finished it. Now I'm gonna use it, and then. Yeah, there was just some bugs still in there, like so the signups didn't work. I mean, the students would enter their names, that worked, but then their ID numbers, and then something didn't work with the ID number. I forgot what I did. Maybe I just formatted the field wrong or something, I forgot. So anyways, it didn't work the way it was supposed to work. So always test, let it rest. Test again. It almost rhymes, so it must be true. So that's very, very, very important. And then let others test it, not just yourself, because you know how to use it anyways. Let other people test it, your colleagues or like your TA or something. Let other people test it. Okay. Then provide context. Context is also important. Yeah, the multimedia has to be set up in a way that students know what to do and what to focus on. I also learned that from like one of my fails. In one of my classes, I tried to do the scavenger hunt thing without the AR though, but I had like different tips and different tasks spread around campus. And so, okay, they have to figure everything out by themselves. So different media was spread around campus. For example, there was a QR code, and the initial one was a QR code on the screen. Right, so students come into the lecture hall. On the screen is a QR code. If you scan the QR code, it's like a first 30-second video of myself saying, "Hey, here's what you have to do." Blah blah blah. And then they were supposed to like find the next tip and then work on those tasks. And when they work on those tasks, they get to the next step and so on. Right. But I didn't tell them because I was like, "You got to figure out." And I don't want to answer any questions because part of the learning process was figuring things out. Right. So I didn't come to class. I observed. So I had like tracking implemented, meaning like I can see how many students scan the QR code, how many students watch the video, and so on. So I can see in real time if there's some progress being made. And I saw that for the first 15, 20 minutes, nobody would scan the QR code, even though it was on the wall on the screen. They were all just waiting for me to come. And then eventually they're like, "Oh, it's been 15 minutes. Like, he's German. He's never late. Why is he not late? Oh, there's a QR code." And then they started scanning it, and then I could see some movement. So I should have done a better job, right, providing instructions in whatever way that might be. I don't need to tell them, "Hey, scan a QR code," but I could have like highlighted it better. I could say like, "Hey, today is something different," and then just a QR code, for example. So different ways, right? So make sure to always provide context so that students know what to focus on. Okay, and then once they do that, you encourage creation. You always invite students to create their own multimedia content for projects. So don't just, what I'm just suggesting, right? Unless it's a writing class, but don't just say write only, but maybe have them also create other kind of media. Because if you let them do that, and they can express themselves better. They learn how to do that, right? Using different tools to create different kinds of media. So it's like a win-win-win situation, actually, I believe. So I think encouraging creation is also very important. And I always, in most classes, when it's possible, I tell students, even if it's a writing assignment, I tell them to also add some media to it. But it's easy for me to say because, well, I teach media stuff, media and communication, so it's easy to do that. But I believe that also in other areas, you could say, okay, use different media form to present your findings, for example. So it's not always the same boring way. It's more engaging also for them and more fun for them to create, I believe. So if I sum things up and if I look at the takeaways, right? I think looking at all those realms of multimedia now in higher education, and I still don't like the word multimedia because I think it sounds like from the 80s. But okay, we still keep going with it. So we talked about different tools, different strategies to kind of like make our teaching instructions more like Oscar-worthy. So now it's your turn to take the steering wheel and to direct your interactive, engaging multimedia class, right? So I hope you A, try, and B, if you have tried, share your triumphs, share your challenges, share your fails, just what I did right now, because you can also learn from those, I think, of course. So share them in the comments. If you don't want to share them in the comments, share them via email, funkitpod@gmail.com, or share them on social media and at funkitpod, comment, or just a DM there. I'm always happy to hear. I will answer all the questions if there are some. And I just hope we can learn from each other. That's really my biggest goal here. If you liked the ideas that I presented, do subscribe, like, share, show your colleagues. It would be cool. Leave a comment if possible. Of course, it helps us reach more people. That would be fantastic. And yeah, again, one more time, the call to action now. Share your experiences because, again, I'm not just saying this to get comments. I'm really curious because I think the more we share, the more we learn from each other. Okay, that's it for this week's Academic Corner. If you're in Thailand, I hope you're having a great long weekend. The last long weekend before the semester starts, so enjoy that. Until then, stay safe, take care. We talk soon. Sawadee Krap.